Good morning, class. This chapter that I'm going to read today is called Sunny Day. After Mr. Jupiter refused to let them roast wieners over their Bunsen burners during science, the fifth graders stomped out into the cold February air for recess. They huddled together in a grumbling mass. All Mr. Jupiter thinks about is schoolwork, 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 said Jackie. Alphabetize these Latin verbs, muttered Rose. Memorize the periodic table of elements, groused Missy. Pasteurize your milk, added Ham. Rose nodded. That was one involved science lesson. Missy shrugged. It got easier after we caught the cows. The students fell silent, remembering. I bet other fifth-grade teachers aren't forced to work so hard, Jackie went on. I bet other fifth-grade teachers are allowed to roast wieners over their Bunsen burners. The others murmured in agreement, and Lil waxed poetic. I wonder, as I wander across the playground lawn, what delight might school be like with Mr. Jupiter gone? The next morning, Mr. Jupiter could not come to class. Overnight, he had developed a rash, a sore throat, a ringing in his ears, and smelly feet. Scarlet macaw fever, he explained to Mrs. Struggles when he called to report his absence. Probably caught during last weekend's trek across the Osa Peninsula. Well, except for the smelly feet. I get those from my mother's side of the family. You poor thing, sympathized the principal. Yes, stinky feet are a burden, agreed Mr. Jupiter. But have no fear, it's just a touch of the bug. I should be back in the classroom tomorrow. But what about today? Cried the principal. I can't, although I wish I could, said Mr. Jupiter. I really don't like leaving my class in the hands of a substitute. Substitute? Mrs. Struggles hastily said goodbye, then whipped out her substitute teacher list. She started dialing. Oh, I'm busy today. I'm, shampooing, my horse, stammered the first sub on the list. I'm sorry, but I'm allergic, fibbed the second sub. Allergic to what? Asked Mrs. Struggles. To all things fifth grade, replied the second sub. The third sub didn't even bother with an excuse. As soon as he heard the words fifth grade, he hung up. What will I do? Wailed Mrs. Struggles. She flipped to the end of the list and read the last name. Beside it, the former principal had made a notation. It read, use only in emergency. Mrs. Struggles, was this an emergency? Mrs. Struggles pictured the fifth graders alone in their classroom. Ye gods! She shrieked. Crossing her fingers, she dialed. By the time the fifth graders filed into the classroom, their substitute teacher was waiting. Her braided hair was covered with sparkly berets, shaped like bunnies, ponies, and kittens. On her right thumb, she wore a purple plastic butterfly ring, and with every step, her light-up tennis shoes flashed a brilliant pink. Good glorious morning, my bright-faced chickie-wickies, she chirped. Oh, aren't you all so cute? She swept Emberly into a hug. Who are you? He demanded, with twists and wiggles. And what have you done with Mr. Jupiter? The substitute released Emberly and giggled. Mr. Joopy Whoopy is playing hooky today, so I'm filling in for him. Isn't that fun? She scrawled her name on the blackboard. That's me, Miss Day. Over the I, she put a smiley face instead of a dot, then beamed at the class. But you can call me by my first name if you like. Sunny. Sunny, repeated Humphrey. Sunny Day? Snickered Lenny. That's my name. Don't wear it out, Miss Day giggled. Hey, cried Bruce, that's my line. Lenny patted him on the shoulder. Don't worry about it, buddy. It's just as lame no matter who says it. They headed to their seats just as Missy shrieked. My desk! I've lost my desk! Get serious, snorted Stanford. You can't lose a desk. But I did, wailed Missy. Yesterday it was here, and today it's gone. She swiped at her eyes. I lost everything. Miss Day giggled again. You didn't lose your desk, silly Willy. I moved it. As a matter of fact, I moved all the desks. I thought it would be fun to mix things up a bit. Missy took a deep, shuddering breath. Mr. Jupiter never moves anything, she explained. He knows I have trouble keeping track of things, so, Sew buttons on your underwear? Interrupted Miss Day. Mr. Joopy Whoopy isn't here. I am, and today I want to have some fun. She hopped up and down and clapped her hands. Ooh, I know, let's play a game. First Chicky Wicky to find his desk wins. Ready? On your mark. Get setty. Go-y. The fifth graders just stood there, stunned. Then Ham pointed. There's my desk, over there behind the Hibernian ceremonial canoe. I'd recognize that Choco Roach smudge anywhere. You win, cried Miss Day. Grabbing Ham's hand, she dragged him around the room in a victory lap. Stop, panted Ham. He clutched his side. Slow down. Wait a second, grumbled Jackie. That wasn't a fair game. You didn't explain the rules. You didn't give everyone a fair chance. Mr. Jupiter always gives everyone a fair chance. Miss Day dropped Ham's hand and stuck out her tongue. Stop being such a party pooper, she cried. Then she clapped and hopped up and down. Ooh, we need a prize. What fun is a game without a prize? She pawed around in her pretty princess backpack a moment, then beamed at Ham. Come forward and receive your prize. Prize? Said Ham, momentarily suspicious. Then he remembered Mr. Jupiter's prizes. What is it? Is it a handful of jelly beans? Mr. Jupiter sometimes has jelly beans. Oh, it's nothing as boring as that, giggled Miss Day. She dug around in her bag and pulled out a tube of lip gloss, she exclaimed. You win a slightly used tube of Poodle's Breath pink lip gloss. Isn't that fun? Ham shook his head and backed away. That particular color will go great with your complexion, said Lenny. And your purse, quipped Miss Day. Hey, she stole my line again, cried Bruce. Lenny shook his head. Mr. Jupiter would never give a prize like that, he said. Victoria raised her hand. Miss Day, she said with a flip of her hair, if Ham doesn't want his prize, can I have it? Poodle's Breath Pink is the perfect shade for my strawberries and cream complexion. Miss Day squinted at Victoria. Strawberries and cream, she giggled. I'd call it tad yellow and smidge green. Hey, bellowed Lenny, I'm the smart aleck around here. Apparently I'm just a little smarter and aleckier, joked Miss Day. She did it again, hollered Bruce. This substitute is a thief, a punchline thief. And I know, and a know-nothing when it comes to makeup, huffed Victoria. Miss Day slapped her hands over her ears. I can't hear you, she sang out. The children stared, and Miss Day grinned. That's better, she said. She held up their American history textbook. Mr. Joopy Whoopy wants me to review Chapter 86, then introduce fractions, give an organic geochemistry quiz, and go over the steps of the Polynesian Koma Nona Wana Boogie dance. But, she smiled so wildly, her back teeth showed. I thought it would just be more fun for me and you to have a free day. Free day? Repeated Humphrey. Free day? Miss Day suddenly squawked like a parrot. Polly, want a cracker? She burst into laughter. Free day, free day. Now she's stealing my lines, grumbled Lenny. Now time for more fun, cried Miss Day. She skipped around the room and up and down the aisles, her tennis shoes blinking. So, class, what else do you want to do today? Should we put on this suit of armor and joust with brooms? What about we build a racetrack out of all these bones and fossils and have guinea pig races? Or maybe, she picked up the skull on Mr. Jupiter's desk, bowling. No, cried the children. Well, aren't you all just a bunch of old fuddy-duddies, said Miss Day. What do you want to do? Let's learn about American history, suggested Lenny. He gulped. Had he really said that? And wasn't there supposed to be an organic geochemistry quiz? Added Melvin, shocked by the words coming out of his mouth. He clapped his foot over it. Miss Day crossed her arms across her chest. But none of that is any fun, she pouted. It would be if Mr. Jupiter was here, said Jackie. At that moment, the door flew open. Good morning, children, said Mr. Jupiter. He strode to the front of the room, wearing an overcoat over his footy pajamas. In his arms, he carried a grocery bag. We thought you were sick, exclaimed Lil. I did feel a bit under the weather earlier, explained Mr. Jupiter, but I am much improved now. He turned to Miss Day. Have they behaved themselves? To tell you the truth, they're kind of dull, replied Miss Day. All they wanted to do was study history and take science quizzes. Science quizzes? Repeated Mr. Jupiter. Science quizzes, said Miss Day. Polly want a cracker? Squawked Lenny. The class burst into laughter. Lenny and Bruce high-fived. We're back, they whooped. And I'm off, said Miss Day. Farewell, plucky duckies. Picking up her backpack, she skipped out the door. Mr. Jupiter turned to his class. You've all been working so hard that I thought you deserved a surprise. A surprise? Repeated Humphrey. What is it? Mr. Jupiter reached into his grocery store bag and pulled out a package of hot dogs. Fifth graders, he said with a grin, fire up your Bunsen burners. Moral, things are never as bad as they seem. Alright, fourth graders, this next chapter is called The Case of the Fugitive Feline. On the Tuesday afternoon before spring break, there was a knock on the classroom door, and Miss Bossetto entered, pulling her art cart behind her. Up until this year, art had always been its own room, but overcrowding had forced the school to add a second kindergarten, so art had to become mobile. Not unlike nomadic Xianggu tribe of the Gobi Desert, Mr. Jupiter had said when he'd heard about the change. Wonderful people, the Xianggu. Now Mr. Jupiter clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. Time for art, he said. P-U-T, away your spelling books, please. Hey, said Amisha. As the students cleared their desk, Miss Bossetto reached into the bottom shelf of her cart and pulled out several large reproductions of famous paintings. Today, she said, we are going to discuss the role of the cat in art history. She held up the first print. This is a painting by Mr. Pierre-Auguste Renoir called Sleeping Girl with a Cat. Notice the intense blue of the cat's fur and how much cuter it is than the sleeping girl. She held up the next print. Here is Geraniums and Cats, also by Mr. Renoir. Aren't those tiger-striped kittens adorable? Obviously, Mr. Renoir adored cats as much as I do. She held up the last print. And here is one of my all-time favorites. It's called Kitten on a Clothesline by Mrs. Sylvia Renoir. Was that Pierre-Auguste's wife? Asked Ashley A. No, that's my landlady, replied Miss Bossetto. But art is art, no matter who creates it. Miss Bossetto stowed the prints, then reached into the middle shelf of her cart. She pulled out a purple velvet pillow with gold fringe. Lovely, commented Victoria, and a fluffy white cat with green eyes. Yeeks! Chirped the guinea pigs from their cage. They poked themselves, wiggling between the bars, sniffing and staring. In Miss Bossetto's hands, the cat hung limp as cooked spaghetti. Is that a live cat? Asked Emberly. In reply, the cat blinked. Then it lolled onto the purple pillow, which Miss Bossetto had placed on top of her art cart, yawned so widely that the students could see down its pink throat, and closed its eyes. Just a little cat nap, snickered Lenny. In answer, the cat snored. Miss Bossetto wiped away a string of drool forming under the cat's chin. Did you know the cat sleeps 17 hours a day? But Mr. Pickles is a particularly heavy sleeper. That's why I chose him for today's art project. Today's art project? Repeated Humphrey. Miss Bossetto nodded. Like the Renoirs, we are going to paint the feline form in all its adorable, sinuous, furry detail. Mr. Pickles will be our model. Reaching into her cart again, she pulled out a stack of paper, some brushes, and several bottles of blue tempera paint. And like Mr. Renoir, we will be working in this lovely ultramarine blue. She passed out the supplies. Rats, grumbled Rose, having accidentally smeared blue paint on her skirt. The stain blended in with that morning's glue stick smudge and chocolate pudding print. Now then, boys and girls, instructed Miss Bossetto, I want you to look very closely at Mr. Pickles. Emberly whipped out his magnifying glass. Miss Bossetto continued, all objects have shape or form. Try visualizing Mr. Pickles' form by peeling away all the details and leaving only his framework, or skeletal structure. That's one way to skin a cat, quipped Lenny. He looked at Bruce for a response. Nothing. Cat got your tongue? Asked Lenny. Bruce grinned. For the next 30 minutes, the students filled their papers with blue tails, blue paws, and blue whiskers. Mr. Pickles continued to snore and drool and twitch in his sleep. The guinea pigs kept watching. Then Miss Bossetto clapped her hands. We've only a few minutes left, so let's begin finishing up, she said. But the fifth graders never got a chance to finish. At that moment, the school bell began clanging hysterically. Fire alarm, Mr. Jupiter said calmly from the back table where he'd been grading the students' macroeconomics papers. He stood, You know the drill! Just as they had practiced dozens of times before, the fifth graders lined up quickly. Miss Bossetto hurriedly checked to make sure the windows were closed, wiping blue paint on her smock as she went. Mr. Jupiter picked up the guinea pig cage and flipped off the lights. Then he let the students and the art teacher down the hallway and out the nearest exit. The fifth graders burst out the door and onto the blacktop. Theatrically, Lenny and Bruce fell into each other's arms, gasping and panting. We're alive, Lenny fake wheezed. Fresh air, Bruce fake coughed. He pounded on his chest. Knock it off, you two, said Mr. Jupiter. Fire drills are serious business. He began counting heads. Is everybody here? Rachel shook her head. Pfft, pfft. What did you say? Asked Ham. Cat, repeated Rachel. Cat. Did you say cat? Asked Ham. Cat, shrieked Miss Bossetto. We forgot Mr. Pickles. She lunged toward the school, but Mr. Jupiter restrained her. Katrina, you know you can't go back inside. That's a violation of the fire code. Miss Bossetto slumped, then nodded. Besides, added Mr. Jupiter, it's just a drill. Mr. Pickles is completely safe. Mark my words, we're going to return to class to find him peacefully dreaming on his pillow. But when the students were finally allowed back into their classroom, they found Mr. Pickles missing, wailed Miss Bossetto. She pressed the now catless pillow to her heart, mixing white cat hair with the smears of ultramarine blue. She may be even messier than I am, Rose said to Missy. Then, oops, Rose stepped backward into the guinea pig cage, which Mr. Jupiter had just returned to the table. Guinea pig fur mingled with her pudding. Still clinging to her pillow, the art teacher cried, oh, where has my precious pussycat gone? Emberly whipped out his magnifying glass. This is a case for Emberly Everclass, he declared. Get serious, snorted Stamford. What do you know about detecting? Plenty, replied Emberly. He added proudly, I've read all 636 McFarty Boys books, mysteries featuring Marty and Artie McFarty and their bull terrier Beans. Woo, whistled Ham. I'm impressed. I am too, said Mr. Jupiter, and as much as I want to encourage the discussion of books, Miss Bossetto needs our help. The boys nodded. We will organize ourselves into 2 search parties, just like the time Colonel Wesley Wimberly Kemp hot air balloon was lost in the wilds of Patagonia, and I... Focus, Mr. Jupiter, Miss Bossetto said. Of course, said Mr. Jupiter. Boys will come with me, girls will go with Miss Bossetto. But that's not how it's done, argued Emberly. This is a mystery. You don't just go searching willy-nilly when you're investigating a mystery. You're supposed to follow clues. You're supposed to use your powers of deductive reasoning. You're supposed to look through a magnifying glass. I appreciate your enthusiasm for the detectival arts, Emberly, but Mr. Pickles has gotten a head start, Mr. Jupiter turned to the students. Class, spread out. Emberly hung back. That was what the McFarty boys always did when investigating mystery. They hung back so they could look for clues alone. Once his classmates were gone, Emberly began searching, slowly, methodically, and with his magnifying glass pressed to his eye. On the door frame, he uncovered a drip of blue paint. In the hall, on Rose's locker, he found a faint blue smudge, and then, aha! Outside Nurse Betadine's office, he found half a blue paw print. The scoundrel is afoot, he muttered. Emberly rocked back on his heels and jiggled the coins in his pocket, just the way Artie McFarty always did when he was using his powers of deduction. Finally, Emberly said, I deduce that Mr. Pickles went that way. He walked into Nurse Betadine's office. Are you feeling sick? She asked. No, I'm a sleuth, he replied. I'm solving the case of Emberly snapped his fingers. The case of the fugitive feline. Nurse Betadine shrugged. Sorry, there's no cat here. Mind if I take a look around? Asked Emberly. Be my guest, replied the nurse, but don't touch anything. I just disinfected the place. Slowly, methodically, and with his magnifying glass pressed to his eye, Emberly searched for yet more clues on top of the eye chart, inside the Band-Aid box, under the cot. "Aha!" he cried. "A hairball." "Impossible," said the nurse. "I keep my office scrupulously clean." "Impossible indeed," replied Emberly, "and yet there is evidence. It means Mr. Pickles was here. But where is he now? The boy detective rocked back on his heels and jiggled the coins in his pocket again. Finally, he said, "I deduce that Mr. Pickles, in a fit of gagging, left the comfort of his pillow to seek medical attention here in your office. Unfortunately, you were outside because of the fire drill. Alone, Mr. Pickles gacked up his hairball, and then—" "Yes," said the nurse, "and then, feeling better, he headed—" Emberly walked back into the hallway. Slowly, methodically, and with his eye pressed to his magnifying glass, he searched for clues. He discovered a single white hair lying in front of the gym's double doors. "In here," he concluded. "But why?" asked Nurse Betadine, following along. "Well, we're about to find out," said Emberly. Mrs. Gluteal was washing the sports equipment when they entered. "There's nothing worse than a filthy kickball," she said, looking up from her sudsy bucket. "Stop!" cried Emberly. "You may be destroying evidence." "Evidence of what?" asked Mrs. Gluteal. "Of Mr. Pickles," he said. "Who?" she said. "The cat." He said. We're on a case," put in Nurse Betadine. "The case of the Fugitive Feline," said Emberly. Mrs. Gluteal rolled her eyes. "Cats would never come in here," she said. "They don't like all the kicking and the screaming and the hurling balls." She dropped a cricket bat into the bucket. "I know it appears improbable, but we must let the evidence decide," replied Emberly. Slowly, methodically, and with his magnifying glass pressed to his eye, he searched for even more clues. He searched through a basket of volleyballs and behind the bowling pins. "Aha!" cried Emberly. "A mouse toy." "I've never seen that before in my life," Mrs. Gluteal said defensively. "I swear." Emberly picked up the toy. "It's still wet with drool," he said. "How unsanitary," said Nurse Betadine. Emberly nodded. "Mr. Pickles was definitely here." "How do you know it was Mr. Pickles?" asked Mrs. Gluteal. "That toy could belong to any cat." "It's elementary," replied Emberly, holding the cat toy with just 2 fingers. "When I last saw Mr. Pickles, he was drooling like a St. Bernard. Only a hyper-salivating cat could leave a toy this wet." Once again, Emberly rocked back on his heels and jiggled the coins in his pocket. "I deduce that after gacking up the hairball, Mr. Pickles suddenly felt frisky, so he came into the empty gym to play." Emberly rubbed his chin. "But then why leave?" Emberly walked to the door and looked out the room directly across the hall. "I think I know," he concluded. "Follow me." He and Nurse Betadine hurried into the school kitchen. "You'll never believe what happened," cried Cook when she saw them. "While I was outside for the fire drill, someone ate," Emberly finished her sentence, "the tuna waffle casserole left over from lunch." "How did you know?" gasped Cook. Emberly tapped his head. "Powers of deduction." "Ah," said Cook. "Obviously playing in the gym made Mr. Pickles hungry, so he came in here for a bite of lunch." Nurse Betadine looked around. "But where is he now?" "Kindergarten room A," said Emberly confidently. "K-room A?" both women exclaimed. "But why?" asked Nurse Betadine. "I'd rather not say." Both women followed him to the kindergarten room. 17 little faces looked up from circle time. "Can we help you?" chirped Miss Fairchild. "I just want to check your sandbox," said Emberly. "Certainly," replied Miss Fairchild. She turned back to her students. Slowly, methodically, and with his magnifying glass pressed to his eye, Emberly pushed aside the plastic molds and shovels until he found the very clue he'd been searching for. "Just as I suspected," he said, pointing. "Mr. Pickles was definitely here." "Is that what I think it is?" asked Cook. Emberly nodded. Nurse Betadine blanched, then shouted, "This sandbox is quarantined. Absolutely no one is allowed to play in it until the sand has been replaced." Miss Fairchild sighed and looked at a little boy in the dinosaur shirt. "Oh, Aiden, not again." "It wasn't me," protested Aiden. "Really, it wasn't me." Emberly rocked back on his heels and jiggled the coins in his pocket yet again. He wiggled the clues around in his mind, trying to fit all the pieces together. Mr. Pickles had coughed up a hairball, played with his mouse, eaten a bellyful of tuna, and used the litter, sandbox. What else was there for a cat to do? He thought back to what Miss Bassetto had said earlier. Mr. Pickles is a particularly heavy sleeper. In his mind's eye, he saw the hair-covered pillow. Eureka! Exclaimed Emberly. My powers of deductive reasoning tell me that there's only one logical place for him to go. All evidence points to it. Dashing from the kindergarten room, he raced down the hall, pushed his way into the fifth-grade classroom, and skittered to a dead stop. What the? Gasped Emberly. At the same moment, the others slumped into the classroom. That cat's long gone. We couldn't find him. Poor Miss Bassetto. No more Mr. Pickles. That was when they saw Emberly standing stock still and clutching his magnifying glass. Emberly, what is it? Asked Mr. Jupiter. You look as if you've seen a ghost. Struck speechless, Emberly pointed to the guinea pig cage. Everyone looked at it. I don't believe it. How can it be? Inside the guinea pig cage, squeezed between the exercise wheel and a bowl of sunflower seeds, the cat slept peacefully. You found my Mr. Pickles! Squealed Miss Bassetto. Mr. Jupiter clapped Emberly on the back. An excellent bit of detectable investigation, Emberly, he said. Congratulations. Emberly blushed modestly. Yeah, said Lenny, but how did Mr. Pickles get in there? And what are they doing? Asked Rose, pointing to the guinea pigs. Just outside the cage, the guinea pigs lolled happily on the purple pillow. Eek, 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 they trilled. I believe they're singing a song from the musical Cats, replied Mr. Jupiter. Stamford turned to Emberly. You may have solved the mystery of Mr. Pickles' disappearance, he said. But tell me, Super Sleuth, what do you explain the whole guinea pig cat mix-up? Slowly, methodically, and with his magnifying glass pressed to his eye, Emberly searched for clues. After a few moments' investigation, he shrugged and scratched his head. Impossible, he deduced. Improbable. My powers of deductive reasoning tell me this is completely illogical. The guinea pig smiled up at him. Moral: many of life's mysteries remain unexplained.